Welcome to Rocksolid Productions, where in this video we have a Super NES Jr. We are going to RGB mod. Stay tuned. Hey everyone, Gary here from Rocksolid Productions. Now before we get started, if this is your first time to the show, just want to take a second and say thank you for stopping by and checking out what we do have going on here today. I really do appreciate it. If you like what you see here, I invite you to check out some of the other videos that we have here on the channel, including other mods for other systems that we've done. We've put different cases on Game Boy Advance SPs. We've done RGB mods on other Super NES Juniors and N64s, Super Famicom Jr. as well. And if you really like what you see, do me a huge favor. Hit that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button, and hit that bell notification. That way each and every time we upload a new video, you are kept the most up to date. And what I want to know from you here today, what's your favorite fighting game of all time on the Super NES? Clay Fighter 2, definitely a fun game. I played a ton of this game with my friend Chris Springup when we were kids in high school. You know, obviously the Street Fighters, Mortal Kombats, there's so many great fighters. TMNT, a lot of great fighters on the Super NES. So one of our viewers, Matthew, sent me an email. He's like, hey, I hear you do console mods. I do some console mods. So he sent me his Super NES Jr. that we are going to go ahead and install one of Voultar's RGB mod kits in here. We are also going to go ahead and do the capacitor swap out on it, and a new thing for me that I have not done yet before. I normally use HD Retrovision cables when I RGB mod my systems. They look great, they are convenient, it's overall just a good solution. Matthew here actually wants to be able to still utilize the S-video output, so we are actually going to hook up the S-video. Now I will have a link down below, I'll have multiple links down below actually, where you can find everything I am going to show you for this mod. If you have to ask, what kind of soldering iron do I need? What kind of solderer do I need? What kind of wire do I need? Probably better off letting someone else do this type of mod for you. And this type of thing, it costs a little bit, not a whole lot. If you're interested in having your system modded, email me. Let's talk. Let's see what we can do. So Matthew has already done me a solid, and he's removed the system screws. He's also removed the top case here, so, or not the case, but the flaps, so we can actually test out Super Famicom cartridges too. So what we're going to do, we're going to take this, we're going to throw it on the bench, we're going to take the rest of the system out of the case, clean it up for him, and we're going to get to some soldering. Before we get started, one of the first things we need to do is hook up his system to make sure it works, and this is mine. His is actually down below on the shelf with my Super Famicom version of Super Metroid, and as you can see, it does work, it does play. It's one of those, before you ever make any sort of modification, make sure the system works. Now we're going to hit the bench. So I'm going to try to give you more of a top-down view than what I normally do, so you can get a better look at everything that is going on here and what I am doing. Now, one of the things that you'll definitely want to make sure that you do is have some sort of like container or something like that to keep the hardware and screws together. You know, lids from aerosol bottles work. This is the, you know, what my solder comes in and everything. I have a magnetic parts tray. I just don't have it with me right now. That generally I use for stuff like this. And with that, we should be able to remove it. Nope, I guess I do need to remove that one. It had been a while since I've done one, so I couldn't remember if I needed to pull that bad boy right there out or not, and I do. There we go, that was the last one we were waiting on. Okay. Just gonna take a second to look at this case. It's in great shape. He said he just bought it recently off of eBay, and man, good job. Really, really nice. This RF shield gets pulled off. And to start with it, just about everything that we're going to work with is on the back. Now what we are going to be working with is this little guy here. This is Voultar's RGB mod kit for the Super NES Jr. And even from when I first started doing my first mod, he continues to evolve and improve on his design. This is smaller, more simple than even what I had set up originally on mine. So what's nice on here too, I'm going to just pull out my dental pick, is he has labeled RGB right here on the pad, so you know what you're going to, and then everything just lines right up there to basically be installed on the system. First of all, we're going to prep the board a little bit because there are some minor things I like doing just to make things nicer overall. So this area here is where we are going to mount this board. There are some basically legs coming out. So what we're going to do is we're going to snip those legs just so that this lays on the board a little bit cleaner, because we really don't want to stress the board when it's mounted in the system itself. So come in here with the side cutters or a flush cut. And I'm just going to bring my brush in there just to make sure that I get those off of there. And then to install this, what you do initially is you just lay it right there on the board. How simple is that? Now, the nice thing, I'm going to pull this back up for a second, there's no electrical components on the back at all, so you don't need to worry about insulating this or shorting anything out. It literally just lays right across the row of pins right there. And then I have some no clean solder flux here that I'm just going to squirt on the board here. It's okay, you're not going to hurt anything. You're actually going to protect your components by applying that. And now we can go ahead and tack that one down. Beautiful. Tack that one down. Beautifuler. And now we can go through and just solder our board into place. Now the solder should have a bright finish when the joint is basically done properly. If it has kind of a dull look to it, probably will not conduct your signal for you. There we go. This pin here did not have a conductor on the board, so there's nothing for us to solder there. Simple. The board, it's installed. Now at this point what I'm also going to do is I'm going to tin my pads here, and I'll just make it easier so I don't have to do that later on down in the future. Part of the board that we are going to be soldering to is right here, these three little, they're called vias, and what we're going to do is we're going to connect the wiring from these three to our RGB right there on the board. Now if you do order these parts from Voultar's mod shop, one of the cool things is the fact that he offers the right wire and everything that you would need right on the site. So this is a 4-conductor wire, so you have your R, your G, your B, and you also have your sync. Now I did just do this off camera because I have to look at what I'm doing pretty closely, but I did separate out the conductors on each end of here. For that I just use an X-Acto knife to trim that out, and then I can get at each one a little bit easily, or more easily. Now one thing, the cool thing about the way Voultar set this up is, so on the board here, let's take a look. So you can see you have RGB, right? The way these vias are is RGB. So you don't have to remember which one is which. Just know that you match color to color, color to color, color to color. So he did a really good job of that layout that even a moron like myself can understand. Now we have to strip down our wires, and I've got just an automatic stripping tool here. And there you can see our wires are stripped. So I actually have some solder paste flux. All I'm going to do is I'm just going to dunk those in there and apply just a little bit onto there. And now at this point I can insert the wires directly into the vias. There we go. This next step is something to be very careful with, because if your soldering iron is too hot, you're going to melt the insulation. You could possibly short these out. So I'm going to turn my soldering iron down. I had it set to 750 degrees. I'm going to drop it down to 550 degrees. And while I wait for my iron to cool down a little bit, the last little thing I'm going to do, just to make sure that this wire doesn't move on me, is I have a tweezers that basically it's automatically closed when I let go. I'm just going to hold it like that, and that'll hold my wires in place for me so I can come in and hit the solder directly onto, you know, boom, 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 and go ahead and get in and out quickly. You don't want to apply a lot of heat for a long time because it's a bad deal. You can melt things, you can damage components. Overall, just get in and out quickly. Even though I've got flux on there, this is just going to give me a little bit more confidence. Now what we're doing at this point is we're just going to tack it. So here's 1, 2, 3. And there you can see how those are all in place. They're not touching each other, they're not shorting out. That is a, you know, pretty good tack, and I'm going to go through, I'm just going to touch them up real quick to make sure that, especially on the white one, it looks like I could use a little bit more solder. Give it a tug, and you're set. Okay, so sync is done as far as wire to the board. Now what I'm going to do with these is I'm going to bring them across the board. I don't like going too short on these wires simply because it's nice to have a little bit of more wiggle room and not to put additional strain when you're doing things like this. This makes a nice little channel right there, and then come up. Actually peel these down a little bit first just so I don't have to do that again. And take our flush cuts, and we're just going to go boop. Give a nice little haircut, as it were, and then come in with our auto stripper. And then again, we're going to just dunk each one in some flux, not to be confused with flocks. Separate our conductors a little bit, and we're going to tin them. 1 little, 2 little, 3 little conductors. We're going to bring this down here. As you can see, the conductors are going to line up pretty much perfectly. Again, give your conductors a bit of a tug, make sure that they are secure. We are almost done with installing the board part of it itself. We next have to strip down our sink. And then for this, our sink is right here. So we'll put a little bit of flux on that. And again, we will tin that. And we will tin our conductor here. Now we're going to dunk again just in some flux paste. Tin my iron over off camera. Awesome. It's still throwing me off the fact that those 3 vias don't have solder in it, but they're not designed to anymore. Now what I'm going to do, before we flip over to the other side and tackle what we need for S-Video, is I'm going to clean up the underside. You can use rubbing alcohol, you can use electronic contact cleaner. That's what I actually like using, as I just have this stuff here is called Magnum Force 2. Spray that down. I've got a brush, so we're just going to clean off all the no clean, because you don't want the board looking all gunky and funky and crappy. So there's our board. Actually, I forgot one thing we're going to do too, is there is a ghosting capacitor fix as well. So there is one capacitor that we are going to swap out. We're going to replace this capacitor here, this C11. What this does is there's a ghosting issue with the Super NES 1 chips, with the Mini as well, that replacing that just seems to really fix that issue. I've done that on mine, and Matthew wants that done on his. So there's the new capacitor right there. It probably just looks like debris on my bench here. And what I'm going to do, again, we're going to apply a little bit of no clean to C11. May wind up finding that this capacitor will actually stick to the tip of your iron like mine did there. If it does, no big deal. You can use, like, that's one of the things I really find useful with the dental pick, is the fact that I can actually scrape that off. But now you can see the pads, they look good. It can be a pain in the butt to get lined on here and in place and not have it stick to your soldering iron. Come on. There we go. As dumb as it may seem, this is one of the most nerve-wracking parts of this entire mod. Alright, we're attached there. Alright, so there the ghosting capacitor is installed. To get S-Video working, what I need to do is I need to loosen the screws that hold this shield down, and there is a transistor in here that I will loosen the screw up for 2. Now with that shield removed, we can get at the chip itself. So now basically what I'm going to do here is I have to solder from 2 of the legs on this chip right there to those 2 pads right there. And this is something I honestly have not done before. Now these wires are not actually included in with Voultar's kit. That one's 10 there. You don't have a whole lot of room to play around in, so you really want to take your time and be careful with what you're doing. Our other lead. And this one I will also have to do off camera, just I need to be able to count the proper spaces and whatnot to make sure that we are getting this in here the right way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right about there. I'm going to actually scratch that up a little bit. There we go. We have both of our wires soldered up. I can flip it over. So at this point I can kind of get my wire measured up. I'm going to leave myself a little bit of slack. And strip our wire. You know what? Instead of fighting it, work smarter, not harder. There's our chroma and luma. And again, same thing. We're going to strip our wire off here. Tin our wires up. There's our chroma soldered up. Tin that bad boy. There's that. Now we're ready to put the system back together. One last thing I'm going to do though is I'm going to clean off our no clean and whatnot. Even though it's no clean, it still I'll go through and just spray that down a little bit. And as you can see, I can do that by hand and it will get me exactly what I need. You know, I don't need to torque down on this stuff. It's, you know, it's not a major sort of stress point. And yes, I realize that I'm unscrewing initially. That's to make sure that I am threading into the pre-existing threads and not cutting new ones as we go. So there's that. Everything is in place there. Wires are routed neatly. Now I'll bring in the bottom of the case here. One point you'll want to be careful for is where these wires come out. Make sure that they are not getting pinched. There we go, dropped right in. And as you can see, The wires are not pinched there at all. Now we're ready to go ahead and screw everything back into the case. The one thing we need to make sure we do first is reinstall the RF shield here, because if you don't, you'll be doing this a second time. Don't ask me how I know that. Okay. So I've got my Hitachi here, and I've got my clutch set pretty loose and the speed set to low. Unscrew slightly first just to make sure the screw's properly in the hole before you start tightening it down. That way you are using existing threads and not cutting new ones. Back one, you may have to, if you're using something like this, I have taken and slid the bit off, but just to make sure that I get a good bite at that screw as I'm going in there, tighten that down by hand, it's good. Now we are ready for the top of his system to get reinstalled, which he did not include the screws for that. So we will be able to test it out pretty easily as it is, you know, just hooking it up to our system. Now the one thing that you do want to do when you put the lid back on with something like this is make sure the switch is in the off position here, and then slide that in the off position right there. And from the outside, you could never tell that there was anything done to the system, but we all know the truth, the fact this is now RGB modded. Let's hook it up, let's test it out, let's make sure it works. So that wraps up our RGB mod for Matthew here on his system. As you can see, 240p, but this is 5 times line multiplication. And I know I've got the brightness and everything turned down here, but man, this looks gorgeous. And just to prove this is my system, you can tell that I've got the flaps on here. His did not. Now, one thing I did have to do with this was I did actually have to swap out the back panel here. I actually bought a second Super NES Jr. to help with this mod. I had a couple issues when I went to actually turn it on and test. Couldn't figure out what it was, and as I was going back and touching up all my solder joints, the barrel of my soldering iron actually touched some of the plastic here. It melted it. I didn't feel right about sending him his system back like that, so I actually swapped that component out for him so that it looks good as new, and I've got a second Super NES Jr. now for parts later on for other projects. But let me know, what do you think? Have you thought about doing something like this? I absolutely love the way the Super NES Jr. looks with this RGB mod, and huge props to Voultar. He puts out a great kit that anyone can afford. It's easy to install, and the results, well, you can see here, are stunning. Now I am going straight through from the system through HD Retrovision cables into my OSSC. Matthew's actually going to use SCART from my understanding. He may be using S-Video too, I'm not 100% sure off the top of my head. But the nice thing about this is it gives you a super clean, look at those pixels, look how beautiful they are. And it's just an overall great setup, and I'm excited to hear Matthew's feedback. Now, if you've got any comments or questions about anything that I've shown you here today, or anything regarding console mods, tips and tricks, how to clean your system, so on and so forth, feel free to leave a comment down below. You can also email me at rocksolidmail@gmail.com. Hit me up on Twitter at RockSolidStudios. We are on Facebook at facebook.com/RockSolidProductions and Instagram at instagram.com/RockSolidProductionsGK. Now, if you are looking to pick up one of these Voultar mod kits, I will have a link down below to his website. For the whole kit, not including shipping, is like $35, $36. That includes the Ghosting Capacitor Fix, that includes the mod board itself, and includes pre-cut wires too. Now, if you are looking for other things like one-up cleaning cards to make sure that your system and cartridges are as clean as possible. I actually had to clean this copy of Super Metroid because I was like, kept putting it in and it wasn't playing. Like, what's going on? It was dirty. So I went ahead, cleaned it with some one-up cleaning cards, good as new. Head on over to CastleManiaGames.com, and the cool thing, he's got all the one-up cleaning cards, including the system cleaners too. You can also use promo code ROCKSOLID10 to save 10% off of most items on the website. And like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, if you like what you see here, if you want to see more, do me a huge favor. Hit that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button, and hit that bell notification, and that way you are kept the most up to date with everything we have going on here with the channel. You can also support the channel a couple of different ways, get early access to that content too. You can head on over to our Patreon page at patreon.com/rocksolid. For as little as $1 a month, $12 a year, you get early access to all of our video content, exclusive content, and a whole lot more. You can also head on over to our Teespring store, where we have t-shirts, sweatshirts, hoodies, and more, all featuring the Rock Solid Productions logo on a different retro style t-shirt. And you may notice towards the end of this video, audio sounds a little bit different. I want to thank those who have supported the channel. We've gotten some new equipment to kind of take away some of the background hiss that we've had. Hopefully you guys don't hear that. I've actually got my ceiling fan going right now to keep the air circulating. I'm hoping it doesn't pick up. It shouldn't through my test and whatnot, but thank you all for all your support and everything that you do to keep this channel up and running. Matthew, thanks for sending me your system to mods. It took longer than it should have. We're going to take care of them in the long run though there. I am Gary, and this has been Rock Solid Productions and our look at another RGB mod using one of Voultar's RGB mod kits into a Super NES Jr. I thank you for watching, and I hope to see you soon.